Hey, what's going on, champs? I'm Aaron Deliosa. Welcome to an Immigrant's Life podcast, my podcast about immigrants and immigration and everything in between. Thank you for listening and downloading the show, and thank you for supporting my dad.
Welcome back, Immigrant Nation. Another week, another new episode. As always, thank you for being here and listening to my ramblings and these stories of remarkable individuals. May you be listening on Spotify, Apple, or Google Podcasts, or even on YouTube, or however you listen to An Immigrant's Life. I appreciate you nonetheless. And while you're on your device, it wouldn't hurt if you could please subscribe or follow us. It's free, and it's the most powerful way to help and support our podcast. Of course, you can also support us by following us on all the social media. Our handle is @AnImmigrant'sLife, one word. Also, if you or someone you know would like to come on the podcast to tell their story, you can hit me up on all our social media accounts I've mentioned. And you can also email me at animmigrantslife@yahoo.com. That's the call for action. Now, let's talk about the episode. This week's guest is a resilient and remarkable woman. Despite being enveloped by darkness of war caused by the U.S. invasion of Iraq, she stayed true to herself and followed her North Star to her inevitable success in the field of science and in life. Let's get to the point. Without further ado, let's get into the show. Isa, dalawa, tatlo. Today's guest is a self-proclaimed science communicator that loves studying the stars and admiring the universe, though the stars in her eyes are far more beautiful than those in the sky. Everyone, please welcome Sarah Alshamaily.
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet all of you virtually.
Hey, Sarah, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm all right. Thank you for coming on the podcast. I really do appreciate it.
Of course. I love that topic.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw your account, like, yo, she's cool, man. I'm gonna talk. I love talking to smart people like you. You know, it makes me feel like I'm smart too.
Oh, everyone is smart, of course, in their own ways, for sure. Yeah, but
Sarah,
it's so
you're
nice of
being
you to
nice.
have me on.
That's
No,
not true.
seriously. No, seriously, it is. I mean, in their own ways, yeah, for sure.
No.
But
There's some people we kind of
well,
like,
yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. But no, thank you so much for having me on. Honestly, it means a lot. Thank you.
Oh, for sure. Before we go on, please tell the Immigrant Nation where they can reach you or if you want to promote anything.
Yeah, so I do have my own Instagram page that talks about science and physics and astronomy, and also my journey as a student and what I do in research and whatnot. You can reach me on it at space.sal on Instagram, and I also have the same page on TikTok as well.
Mm-hmm.
And on LinkedIn, it's Sarah Alshamaily.
Awesome. Why is it called space.sal?
So space is because of space, and then Sal is because my first name is Sarah, so S, and then Alshamaily, so A-L. So
Okay.
space.sal.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough.
Yeah.
That sounds cool. By the way, Congratulations on graduating.
Thank you so much. It was a long journey for sure. A long time coming.
How long did it take you?
So I started my university journey in 2013, and I finished it in 2022.
That's a long time, yeah.
It is long. Yeah, I've had to I've went through some obstacles and things along the way, especially when I first came to Canada. It was just a major cultural shock, and like it took me some time to also get used to the fact that I'm at university, not high school anymore. And so like the entire teaching style was so different from what I'm used to. And like I was so attached to my parents. I am still attached to my parents, but like when I first came here, I came here on my own. And so like I did not have anyone from my like culture or that spoke the same language that I could connect with. And so even things as simple as the weather, it was just so different. because the weather back home is so hot and humid, and that's how I like it too. But then when I came to Canada, it's not the same temperature, and so like it's just a different climate, right? So like it took me some time to get used to that as well. Like it was so funny. My friends would see me like wearing a rain jacket when it was like 15 degrees or like 60 degrees outside. They're like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Leave me alone. This is my way of like coping with it." But yeah, then like I think it took me some time to like also get used to the course load and whatever. And like it depends like each university, but I think for mine it was like if you don't follow the course outline that they have for the program, like if you take 4 or 3 courses instead of 5 courses, then you can get set back a lot because each course is offered like once a year. And so you would, yeah. So like if you decide that you wouldn't take this course this year, then you'd have to wait and a whole year for so you can take it. And some courses are like prerequisites for others. So like they unlock other courses as well. And so all of that came into play. And so it took me a very long time to finish my degree. Yeah.
Hey, you finished.
Yeah. Thank God. Honestly, like I'm so relieved I did. Like,
There's this comedian that says it like a guy that finishes first in medical school and the last guy that finished in medical school. What do you call those guys?
Medical school as well. People who finish medical school.
Doctors.
Doctors, yeah, exactly.
So pretty much like it doesn't matter if you finish the first or the last. You're gonna be a doctor. You're still gonna be outside there with a doctor name, you know?
Yeah, for sure, exactly, yeah. And like that's what I tried doing. Like after, like I obviously along the way I picked up the right techniques and stuff to study for courses, and like I also used the resources that were available to me, like in the university, because I didn't use them before. So they helped a lot. And then the fact that I started having friends and I started having a social life as well, it alleviated the fact that I was away from my parents and away from family, and the fact that they were like all the way on the opposite side of the globe. Yeah.
Definitely. Oh, just for context, what did you finish?
So I finished my bachelor's of science in physics and astronomy, and so I did a combined major. Usually the course itself, because it's not like one major, like advisors tell you it does take 5.5 years for students to finish the course load. But yeah, it took me longer than that, but I was just taking it slowly, one step at a time.
It probably would take me 100 years to finish one course of physics and astronomy. Forget about it. I probably won't even finish it.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, like it was challenging at first, but you know what kept me going was the fact that like I and I've been told by a lot of people that like I wouldn't be able to finish this degree or like this program, but I didn't listen. I was like, no, I know what I'm capable of. Lots of people, like friends and even like some like professional people that I've met in the field as well. They were telling me that they think that I should just switch or drop out. But I didn't listen. And so I just kept going, and I was like, no, like I'll prove to them and to me, especially to me, that I can do it, and like I deserve to be here and stuff. So yeah, I did it.
Hey, good job.
Yeah.
Man.
Thank
Tell
you
them
so
what's
much.
up, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much.
Before we go on talk about space and whatnot, the smart stuff that I would love to talk to you about, let's just put some background on you. So I read that you were born in Iraq just a few years after the Gulf War. How was like Iraq then?
So I remember like leaving Iraq when I was 8 or 9 years old. I left it during the U.S. like after the U.S. invasion of Iraq. Back then, like life was as far as my memory can go, life was amazing. Like before the war and everything, like everywhere you go, people were so friendly. They were also welcoming, and your family, like my entire family members were there. You wouldn't have to worry about, oh, let's go on a Zoom call or let's go on a Skype call or whatever that fits this person's time zone so we can connect or communicate. And so everything was just so easy and like it was just warm, you know. But then when the war happened, of course, like politically, it wasn't safe for for kids or to grow up around that environment. I remember like seeing like sorry for the detail, but like just blood everywhere and like just bodies in the streets and stuff. And so I saw that when I was a kid. And so like now, no matter what you say, like, oh, do you get scared from this? I'll be like, no, like I don't, because I saw that when I was like a kid, when I was very, very young. And so my parents decided that, it was better for us to, it was better for us to raise the family in general, like, and to raise me as well outside of these situations. And so, and it wasn't just my parents that left, like so many Iraqis afterwards
I
just
live too. It's just
migrated.
bodies in the ground.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they just migrated everywhere to like all over the world. And like
But was
even
it
my
easy
own.
though? Was it easy to leave?
No, it was not easy at all. So my dad moved to Dubai first so he can find a job, and then so that we can like come after him, like with him. But it's just hard because like when you're leaving a country, your country, and then you're going to a new one to start over, to start a whole new life. Like it's just hard for you to find a job and to have a job that pays well so that you can support the family and whatnot. But I mean, somehow my dad did it, and then he found an okay job that pays okay, and then we went there with him. And then I remember just walking like in the streets of like the UAE, Dubai specifically, and I was just like so mesmerized by like the buildings and stuff, because even though Iraq was like that back before then, like after the war, it was just like you couldn't recognize the city at all, like Baghdad specifically, or any other part of Iraq. It was just so sad. And so yeah, I grew up there in the UAE. And it was with some difficulties as well, just because, it's not your home country. But it was also welcoming. And the fact that it's still an Arabic country made a big difference. Like, I think if I made that jump from Iraq to an English speaking country, it would have been way more difficult just because it's not the same at all. And like, I was very, very young when I left Iraq. But the fact that I went there to an Arabic country, even though it's not Iraq, but like, some of the, like you can still speak Arabic there and they would still understand what you're saying. It's just the fact that you would have some similarities with the Arab cultures that were there in the city it just made a big difference. Yeah.
Was there prejudice towards you guys?
Yes. Well, I mean, there are like not prejudice, like you wouldn't expect someone to come up to you in the street and would say like, hey, you're not from this country, you shouldn't be here, leave. You don't see that happening. However, when it comes to like certain opportunities, they do have a preference for like locals. So like for the people that are born from that specific, like from the UAE, to have the opportunities first before like, looking at the other pool of like the nationalities that they have. And so I think that might have been the most thing that would stand out to me. But when it comes to like school or even friends or anything, there wasn't anything like that. Like they were always very welcoming, and you wouldn't like, I didn't see any sort of reason that would allow me to think like, hey, these people are not friendly. They don't want me here in this country or whatever. I felt that way when I first came to Canada, though. Let me just say, but that's just a whole other story.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's your guys' status there?
So in Dubai, we were just expats, like we were just foreigners that were working there. So over there in Dubai, if like you don't have a work visa, or I think if you're not a student or whatever, then you can't really stay in the country unless you're visiting, like you're a tourist. And so I think that that factor also added some pressure on our backs, just because, like for whatever reason, like if they say, oh, we have to let you go from this job, then you can't really stay in the country. And then we also can't go back to Iraq, like, because it's not safe. And so where would you go? And so my family and I, or yeah, like we were saying, like maybe it is worth it to look into the fact that maybe we can, have a country to belong to us, that we can call our own, that we can actually belong to. And also other issues like that just came up, like political stability in Iraq wasn't at all okay at all. And the fact that we just the status of our country made the opportunities for us wherever we go just not very readily available. Let me just put it that way. So just because they might see like your nationality is Iraqi, then they might not give you the same like opportunities that they would give everyone else. Just because of the political instability.
How did you end up in Canada?
So good question. I first came here when I was trying to apply for universities. So, I finished as I was going through like my last year of high school. I met with a representative that has information about Canadian universities, and so I told her I am very interested in doing astronomy or something in physics. And so she was like, "Well, why don't you do both? Like, there is an option that does that in Canadian universities." And I was like, okay, sure. Like, that sounds like a really good opportunity. And then she told me, like, you can check out their websites and stuff. And so she gave me a list of the Canadian universities to check out. And so I went on like online and I saw each and every one with my family. And we decided that we would apply to some of them. And so we applied to the university that I currently graduated from, and I also applied to like a few others in the same province and like outside provinces as well. And yeah, and then that's how I ended up here. And also the fact that it is like like I would say it is kind of safer than like the USA or like other parts of the world. And I think it is a bit more accepting towards students, international students like that. Yeah.
Yeah, especially, where you coming from.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That was a very important factor for me as well, just because I didn't want to live in a place where I would just feel threatened like every day, just for the sake that I was Iraqi or the fact that I was Arab or Muslim or whatever. So that played a big role in me deciding which country I would go to.
You always like astronomy?
Yes. I've always liked the skies and the stars. So like ever since I was a kid, I would just always go out at night and like just look up and be like, oh, like I wonder what these lights are. I used to call them lights.
Oh yeah. I like that story that when you were a little girl, you were watching the stars.
Yeah, because because of the war, so we didn't have a stable flow of electricity back in our homes. And so until like the generators would start working and everything, like you would get maybe like 10-15 minutes of just no electricity at all. And so I would take that, just go out, look up, and then I would see like the skies and the stars, and they would look amazing. And so I always had that fascination, I guess. And then my family nurtured that fascination, and they would always encourage me to ask questions and stuff. They would always like watch movies about space and sci-fi movies and stuff like that. And so I think it was nurtured as well. But I've always had it in me. And then when I got into high school, I learned that, there is a field called astronomy that you can pursue. And I was like, okay, like this is amazing. I guess I know what I'm doing now.
That's awesome, man. I always for the lack of a better word, envious to people like they knew since they were young what they wanted to do. Like I had a friend, he's 4 years old. When the first time he saw a drum set, he said, "I'm gonna be a drummer for the rest of my life."
Yeah, wow, that's amazing. I always had that. Like I always knew somehow that I would be in sciences. Like I didn't know I would necessarily be into research or if I would like be an astronaut, but I always knew like when I was younger, that I would always do something related to science. But then when I grow up, I think the things that children specifically, or young teens or young adults are exposed to helps or like help shape their interests a lot. And so I think because I was exposed to like sci-fi books and movies and discussions with family members and stuff like that, then I grew up, liking sciences even more than originally when I used to. So I think it's very important for like families or whatever or not even families, like for the kids to have the exposure like that. But I always say to people, like, if you don't know what you're doing, or like if you don't know what you want to do or what your passion is in life, that's okay. Don't compare your clock to anyone else's clock. Everyone is going at their own pace, and whatever, like, you'll find it eventually. Just make sure that you try on lots of stuff, because that's the only way that you'll know if you like something or if you don't like something. But yeah, like, it's okay. We're all just fish in the sea.
Or stars in the sky.
Or stars in the sky, exactly. Yeah.
Beautiful. So let's go back a little bit when you moved to Canada and you faced all these challenges. What was the main challenge other than missing your family? That's obvious. What was the main challenge for you that kind of took it hard for you to move on?
I would say it's the courses and like what they were teaching in university. I think that was my main issue, because I thought I was studying correctly, or like how I'm supposed to. But then when I get my grades or feedback from profs, it's not really where, like, what I was expecting. And so that would always make me think, like, okay, how can I make myself better? Like, what type of steps I need to do to get the results that I want. And that entire, like, in order for me to answer that question, that took me almost 2 years, like, after I joined university.
Wow.
Yeah. And back then, I wasn't aware of the resources that they had. So, like, you could go to academic advising or career advising, or just tutors that can help you with specific things that you had, like, questions about. I didn't know these existed, and so I felt like, oh, like, am I the only one that was struggling with this sort of thing? Is everyone else doing better than I am? And so I faced huge imposter syndrome symptoms because of that, and because of the fact that I I came all the way from Iraq, and like, I left my family, and now my family is missing me. I'm missing them. It made me think that, oh, I should succeed. Like, I have to. There's no going back for me. Like, I have to make this. And so I think maybe I was more pressured in that way, because when you're a student and when you're like coming all this way internationally to go into university, like, it's not an easy decision. It's not like something that just happened within overnight. Like, it took lots of decisions, lots of days deciding, talking about it. And so, yeah, like, all these things. So, like, courses. And then I also heard people telling me, like, you won't make it. That's when I heard that advice, like, you should just change your major. And so you can imagine, like, how frustrated or how discouraged I was in the beginning. But then, I don't know, somehow I was like, no, like, I think I've always, even during high school, I've always been a believer in myself. Like, I've never doubted myself at all, not once. So I was like, no, like, you came all this way for a reason. Like, you were given admittance, and like, you were accepted into this university for a reason. Show them what you're made of, I guess. And then that's when I started seeking out help and like reaching out to resources and making more friends and being just more involved within the community. And yeah, and then when I did that, things started to look up, and then I, like, before you know it, I mean, 2 years after, fast forward, I got the hang of it. So during my third and fourth year of my program, I'd say, like, it was like a drastic change in grades specifically. Like, yeah, and like, profs know me now. Like, I talk to them and they talk to me, and it's just a major switch. But I think every student goes through this, no matter if you're an international or you're a domestic student. I think when you go into university, it takes a while for students to accept the fact that the environment has changed. The prof might not give you the same attention that he used to, that teachers may give students in high school. And so just because there's like a big class of, like, I don't know, 150 students in like one big auditorium, and so it's just hard for for profs to like give the same attention to every student. And so you would have to have some time to do extra work yourself, like alone, outside classroom hours. Yeah.
During those dark nights and
Mm-hmm.
dark days, did you ever call your mom or dad and say like, "Pick me up. I can't do this no more"?
Oh my gosh, I call them. I call them maybe every other night, and I would just cry to them, and I would tell them why am I like I would even like show my frustrations on them. Like I'd be like, why am I here? Like, why are you guys? Why are you not here with me? Like what's going on? But like like afterwards, they would always encourage me, and they would always calm me down, and they would always tell me like, you're there for a reason. Like they also believed in me more than I believed in myself sometimes. And so they would always tell me like, we know what you're made up of, we know what your skills are, we know what that you're always capable, you've always been. And so I think words of encouragement like that, specifically from parents, goes a very, very long way. And so like I also like my love for them, like I didn't want to also disappoint them, and like I didn't want to tell them like, okay, I can't do this anymore, I want to go home. Like I didn't want to do that to them at all, because I know even though they would still love me and like support me in my decision, they would be a little bit disappointed, of course, because no parent would be happy necessarily like right away, if like their child was like, okay, I'm just going to drop out of university.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I wanted to prove it to people, my parents, myself, my advisors, my profs, everyone, that was like, okay, like it's not just me like passing a course and getting a grade. It meant more to me than that.
Where were you
Yeah.
staying during those times?
So I stayed in dorms for the first year, because I think it was a good idea for me to like just be exposed to like friends and stuff, and because I was on my own. And then after that, during second year, I stayed with for the first half. I stayed with some friends, some girls like that I met in dorms. We all stayed in a house nearby campus. And then after that, for the second half of the year, I went and stayed by myself. And so like, and then now my mom lives with me right now. And
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
yeah, because I was telling her, I was like, at least one of you guys has to be here, like, you know what I mean? So she's like, okay, like I'll come, I guess. And then so
I
she's living with
guess.
me now. Yeah, so like, okay, if you want me here, okay, I'll come.
That's
Um,
funny. When you
yeah.
graduated, where the family was there? Did they attend?
So no, unfortunately not, because so my mom was here, right? Because she was already here, but I told my family members to like I sent them invitations for the graduation, and they applied for the Canadian visa, but they all got rejected.
Oh man.
Yeah, and so it was kind of tough because like you can see all your friends and like all their families there with them, like all their family members. But then, it was just my mom, right? And like she also wanted my other family members to be there as well. But like at the end of the day, I was like, okay, you guys can see the live stream on this link, like just follow it, and like you'll see me walking across the stage.
How about dad?
Dad. So yeah, dad was one of the. So dad is literally still waiting for his visa.
He
Like,
got rejected too?
yeah,
What? Like, that doesn't even
I
make
don't.
sense.
I don't know. Yeah, I know. Like I don't know. Yeah. So like, and the thing is, like, I made sure like I would give them invites and stuff like that, just so like they can see like they have a legit reason to come. But like for some reason, I think maybe the fact that they're Iraqis,
Yeah.
maybe it literally plays a big role in this.
Let's not fool around.
Yeah, it lets me fool around exactly. Like
If they're
it's
coming
just,
from Britain, you know what I mean?
no, they would not get rejected like if they were from another nationality. But it is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. That's I'm sorry to hear that.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, I was pretty bummed about it. Like, I was telling my mom, I was like, imagine if like she wasn't here too. Like, I would literally just be walking across
By
the stage
yourself?
on my own. Like, it would be so bad. But I'm really glad that she was there. At least one family member was there to see me graduate. But
It's okay.
been a journey. Yeah, been a journey.
Yeah. I'm
for
proud
sure.
of you, man. I mean,
Oh, thank you.
excuse my French, but the balls for a
Yeah.
young girl from a different culture, go to a
Hmm.
different culture, different country, no one's there to support her physically and just push through. And then people saying, oh, by the way, you're not graduating, you're not gonna graduate, it's too hard, or this or that. And you just like, no, dude, guess what?
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. It means a lot to me. Yeah. Yeah, like honestly, I'm so glad I stayed with it. Like it was like I could have easily switched to like a different major that wouldn't take me as long, but it's the fact that I wanted to do physics and astronomy. It just took a while. But I also didn't want to do just physics or just astronomy. I mean, like nothing wrong with these fields, but it's just I that's not what I wanted to do. And so I was like, I don't want to just switch into something that I'm not really into 100% with like just to make my time shorter at the university. Like no, like I'll stick through with this. Like I know I can do it. Just, let me do my thing. And then I did. And then it was good. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that
Hmm.
your parents just let you do physics and astronomy because usually it's gonna be a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm so glad they've been so supportive of me. To be honest, they're part of the reason why I wanted to go into this field is because they like nurtured that again, right? And so it was like my parents, they had a big influence on me. My grandfather, my uncle, my aunts, like my grandmother, like all of them, like they were very, very supportive and they were just like, whatever makes you happy, whatever, like just go do it. I'm like, okay, I want to go into physics and astronomy. And they're like, okay,
I love
okay, I
that.
guess it is what it is.
I
Yeah.
love that because the stereotype is like, oh, she's Iraqi. They probably force her to do whatever they want her to do, and then eventually get married.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. No, like my family, I think they don't think that way at all. Like they did, in fact, they don't want me to be like a lawyer, a doctor, or an engineer, or whatever. They're like, we've seen a lot of these people throughout our lifetime. So it was refreshing for them, I think, when I said like I don't want to do that. I just want to be a scientist. And so yeah, like even then, like they were like, people come up and be like, "Oh, looks like so now, like she graduated. When is she gonna get married?" They're like, not anytime soon. Like, just let her live her life, man. Like, let her just accomplish her goals and like, get into grad school and whatnot. And then maybe like, okay, fine, but like, no, let's let her do her thing. Like, she
Yeah.
she can decide for herself.
Let
Yeah,
her go camping.
let her go camping with friends. Exactly.
Currently, you're doing research in particle physics. I don't even know what that means, but
Yes.
how's that experience so far?
Oh my gosh, it's been incredible to be honest. So before I took this job, like this research job, I didn't know much about the field. I've always been fascinated about it. Like, it's just the fact that you have like a particle collider, and you take a particle and then you collide it with another particle at very high energies, and then
Wait.
whatever.
Hey, listen. I'm not a smart dude. Give it a minute, okay? Okay, how can you get a particle, which is, I guess, an atom, a proton, or whatever?
Yeah, yeah.
How do you get it? How do you even separate them? Like,
um, so like, everything like, photons is like light particles, right? And
mm,
um, so if you so particles are made up of quarks. So quarks are what make up, electrons, protons, gluons, muons, and all that kind of stuff.
mm.
And so if you have the right combination of these quarks, and then so you can form an electron, or you can form a proton, or you can form any sort of other particle. And so that's how you would get that particle. So you would get that, for example, if you say like, oh, I'm interested in studying uh, proton-proton collisions. So you get a proton, you get another proton, and you collide them together, but at very, very like high energies. And so just massive things, like beautiful things come out from that collision in the collider, in the detector. And so, through software and through the hardware, they like you would get the data back and you would get, okay, like the energies of these things that came out is they're so and so, and their masses are so and so, and what can that tell us about physics? Like, are we like, did we accomplish something, or are these data points just garbage? Like, they're just not useful data points. Yeah, and so like you just do analysis with that kind of stuff, like at CERN or at Fermilab or Triumph or whatever. So these are all like names of like particle accelerator organizations, right? And so yeah, so like apart from like this job before that, I didn't know much about that field. It was always fascinating to me, but I always thought it was a bit complicated to get into because you'd have to have some sort of like really good knowledge about quantum physics or quantum mechanics and nuclear physics and particle physics and whatnot, and like the concept and theory that go on behind that, behind the scenes. But once I took the job, and like I started reading about it, and like, you know, my supervisor is very like understanding and helpful and supportive, and so she's always been there to answer my questions and stuff. I've learned tremendous things because of that, and so now I know, you know, certain aspects in particle physics that I necessarily haven't known before just because of this job. So it's been a major learning curve for sure. But I can't say it's always been that way. Like when I first started, I didn't know what to do. Like I didn't know what I was doing at all for like the first month or like month and a half. And I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? Am I even doing this right? Like when, you know, but I made sure to ask a lot of questions, and I think that's how I learned it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. So after this, you're planning to do graduate school or?
Yeah, so hopefully, yeah. So I'm planning on going to grad school, doing my master's, either in particle physics, doing dark matter, or cosmology, doing dark matter. Like, because I'm just really, really interested in dark matter stuff. So, um, whatever, whichever like university I apply to, and whichever supervisor tells me that, yeah, like I've accepted you to be part of my team, that's the one that I'm gonna go with.
Hmm.
But so far, I'm looking at UVic, University of Victoria, University of British Columbia, and McGill. And so,
Oh, my
yeah, we'll
neighborhood,
see. Oh, cool. Where are you staying?
Montreal.
Oh, nice. Oh my gosh,
Mm.
I love Montreal. It's a nice city.
It's
I've been
beautiful,
there
yeah.
once.
Why do you
Yeah.
love working for in STEM?
Like what do I love to do?
Yeah, and why do you love it? Because it's kind of
Um,
hard.
it is hard. Yeah. You know, I always love. I was always like, I love the fact to be fascinated by things. Like I've always liked to be curious about why things work the way they do, and why do we have these laws of physics and like whatnot. And so I've always been like a supporter of STEM in that sense. And also because I've seen the advantages and benefits of the STEM field in our lives.
Hmm.
Like no one can deny the fact that STEM has improved our lives tremendously, like 1,000 times more. You know, whether it's technology or mathematics or engineering or science in general, it's always been beneficial. Like at some point, if you are a human being and you've interacted with anything in your life, it's possible because of STEM. And so I have always wanted to dig deeper into the core of that and see why, you know, things work the way they do for myself. But in terms of like what was your other part of the question? Like why do you love doing it?
Yeah, yeah. And what do you
Yeah.
love about it?
Yeah, and like so yeah, and so because of that, like I've always seen an admiration of some sort in this field, and I've always had a major respect for it. Like I respect it more than any, I mean, personally, because I'm biased, I respect it more than any field in my opinion, just because it's very crucial. Like if it wasn't for STEM, we wouldn't even be here.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. Even flat
yeah,
earthers, you know what I mean?
exactly. Hello, flat earthers. But with that being said, like there is still a lot of work to be done in this field, like in terms of, you know, like equity wise and like women in STEM and what kind of stuff. Like there needs to be lots of changes in that sense as well,
Mm.
just like any other field. But yeah, I think there is change, but it's slow. But there is change nonetheless. So that's a good sign.
Yeah, of course. Do you feel it like personally that the equity and the prejudice towards you're from Iraq or you're a woman and all that stuff?
Oh yeah, 100%. Like I said, like I've experienced that when I came here. And the fact that, you know, people look at you, and because you don't have like like you do look like you're from the Middle East, you know what I mean? Like I don't want to stereotype, but like it's just like they judge you based on how you look. And so the minute they make that judgment in their heads, and then they tell you things like that are hurtful, that are like, oh, like I've had so many people in university, like this is not a joke, this is a true story that happened to me. When I first moved to the dorms, I was eating in the cafeteria, and I had someone come up to me, and I thought they were being really nice, they're Canadian, and it was a guy, and he was like, oh, welcome. Is this your first time here? And I was like, yeah, it is. And he was asking me, oh, where are you from? So I told him I'm from Iraq, but like I came from UAE, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, he said two things during that conversation that really like just made my eyes bulge, because like I didn't know what to answer him. He was like, oh, your English, you speak English pretty well, for someone who's from Iraq. And I didn't know what to say. I was like, what? What do you mean? Like, what do you mean? What? He's like, yeah, like, because like you do have a slight accent, but like it's not very, very noticeable. And I just stared at him, and I was like, okay, like, and so, like, I don't know what to tell you. What do you want me to
There's
say?
nothing to say.
There is nothing to say. Like, and so things like that, like they expect people from the Middle East, specifically from the Middle East, that come into Canada or the US or just North America or the UK or whatever. They think that, oh, we had such miserable lives back home and that we were living like very poorly and whatever. But I'm like, no, that's really not the case. The case is because it's politically not stable. And that's because of the wars that your countries do on our countries. Like what do you like it's like I don't understand. And so yeah, so like that was one of them. And then the other thing he said was, oh, I don't know how I was talking, and then I was checking like the time on my phone. And he's like, oh, nice phone. I was like, oh, thank you. And he's like, where did you get it from? And I was like, oh, I got it from like back home. And he literally asked me this question. He's not joking. He's like, you have phones back home? You have phones in the UAE? And I thought he was joking, and I started laughing. He just stared at me. He's like, no, I'm serious. And I was like, well, what? Why? What? I didn't know what to say. Oh my gosh, I was so uncomfortable. But like I also didn't want to be rude to him, because like he was like welcoming me into the country and whatever, blah blah blah. So like I didn't want to be rude.
He
but
definitely
also
welcomed you with
he
racism.
did welcome. Yeah, exactly. And I was like, what? Like I don't know what you want me to say to that. And then and then I was just like, yeah, like we do have phones. Like we don't. And I made a joke. I was like, we don't really send like messenger doves to talk to each other. Like I don't know what you want. What do you mean? And then he's like, okay, well, it was nice to meet you. Then I left, and then I think a few weeks after, I was taking a cab somewhere, and the cab driver was like, he told me, he was like, oh, where are you from? And I was like, oh, I'm from Iraq, but I lived in Dubai. And then he's like, oh, so he said this. He was like, oh, women are not allowed to drive in Dubai, right? And I was like, no, they are allowed to. What do you mean? And he's like, oh, well, because if you came here, you must be feeling relief that you like came from such an oppressive country. He said that to my face, and like I didn't know what to say. And well, I kind of like took a minute to like think about my answer, and then I was like, well, to be honest, like it's an amazing country, and you can literally do whatever you want, and like women can do whatever they want over there. Like like I don't like just the fact that they may wear headscarves or their attire may look different from you. You don't have to judge what is possible, what is not possible back there. Like it's not oppressive. It's not whatever. Like, and so, yeah.
Yeah. So, because, it's like every Arab country or a Middle East country, they get bunched in one thing, right? Like if one country did this, oh, that's what they do.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's sad to see that, to be honest. Like, that's why, like, it's one of the reasons why, it is one of the reasons why I wanted to like prove my name, like, and to put my name out there, specifically in the STEM field, is because I want people to see like Iraqi women or just Middle Eastern women in general, Arab Muslim women in general, they can do this. Like they have the right to be here and whatnot. compared to what some people think. Yeah.
I love that. I love that.
Thank you.
That's one thing that I guess quote unquote Canadians would never understand, that extra pressure that we put on ourselves because we are immigrants, at least the ones that cares.
Exactly.
That we represent not just our family, we represent a race.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. 100%.
Like if someone meets me and they found out that I'm Filipino and I do something that in a negative way, I guess, they will think all Filipinos are like that. And he's going to tell
Exactly.
all the people that he knows that, oh, that's what they do. They're disgusting or they do that.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. It is sad to see that happening because you see a lot of stereotypes surrounding people that are not like people of color or just Black people as well. Like it's so sad to see that circulating around, like stereotypes that necessarily don't really exist. But because, you immigrated from a country or you came from a country that is not predominantly white or that is not like white majority, you have to live with that kind of, and like, I don't know if that is ever going to change, to be honest. Like, I mean, I'm trying to be hopeful about this. Like, and I'm trying to see if this will actually change within the years. But like from the looks of it, like it still happens up to this very day. Like racism exists in so many levels, and I think it's so integrated into our lives right now. That you're either on the receiving end of it or you're either the one giving it. Like it's always there in like some sort of even major or minor way, but it's always there. And there's no, honestly, like I haven't met anyone who is an immigrant or who is from the Middle East that hasn't faced that way, like that, or that hasn't felt that way. Yeah. And so it's kind of sad to see that happening,
Yeah. I like what you said about I don't look at it as a negative, but I think it's more of a realist view that racism is always going to be there. Because that's just who we are. You know what I mean? Like, we're always going to find a division.
Yeah. Yeah. And no matter like, the campaigns and the efforts, to bring like world peace. And I don't think realistically, I really don't think it might happen just because there's like a lot of power play in the world right now. Like you have lots of countries that are in power, and there are so many countries below these countries that are not in power. And so whenever there is a political like instability in the world, right there will always be, there won't be peace.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
Let's leave this earth and let's talk about space.
Sure. Please. My favorite.
I read that you deem that space exploration is vital for the survival of humanity. Care to elaborate that?
Yeah, for sure. So, let me start off by saying that, problems on Earth are 100% our priority to deal with. And focusing on space exploration doesn't necessarily mean that we will leave the solution apart from like solving problems on Earth. In fact, one of the reasons why we want to go to space and like be involved in space exploration is because we want to solve problems on Earth. And so if you look at major examples, one of them being the fact that, your cell phone camera, for example, it wouldn't have existed without space exploration. Baby formula, it would not have existed without space exploration. So you have lots of examples on why space exploration is very, very important. Now, why I think it is vital for the survival of the human race is because we are living on a planet that does not have infinite resources. We all know this. We all know resources on the beautiful planet Earth, they are very finite. And our population is growing, is not decreasing. Sooner or later, these resources will be used up. And so, and I'm talking about like billions of years from now, but let's think about like very far away into the future, right? If these finite resources do get used up, then what will become of the human race? Like we can't just stay under one planet, surviving in one planet. We have to be multiplanetary, or we have to have some sort of like space travel available just so that we can carry on the legacy somewhere else. The fact that the sun might well, it is a fact, yeah, that the sun would explode or would swallow Earth literally, in the next millions or billions of years is also a fact, just because it's going to near its end as a main sequence star, right? And so when that happens, what will happen as well? And so you have to keep thinking of these like possibilities, and they're not really possibilities because they there's like a very big chance that they might happen. And so, some people will say, well, we can't think millions of years ahead. And I agree, but the fact that we're talking about space exploration is we're not just talking about, going from like Canada to Dubai. Like it's something that is entirely different. You'd need new resources. You'd need new ways of doing it. You need new technology and new engineering involved in that kind of thing. There are so many factors involved. And so because of all of these factors, millions of years doesn't really necessarily seem like a very long time for us to accomplish that. And so I'd say, like, given the fact that we have already been to the moon once and we're going to go again, which is a great thing. And then the plans are for humans to use the moon as a base to go to Mars. That I see that happening within the next 100 years. And so that is a good thing because, if like, and then like, that's how everything else started. Like when cars were first invented, only the rich and the capable and like the powerful could ride a car. But then eventually all of society started using it. The same thing with planes, the same thing with any other mode of transportation, right? And so I'm not saying that's a good thing. Like, I think, space exploration, just like any other public transportation way, should be available for the public, no matter how much money you have. But I think even if only the rich can go now, I mean, as long as it's a possibility for us to actually use it within the next years or so, I think would be very, very great.
But not everyone will be able to fly, right? Like into space, because some of them, they won't be, like, physically won't be able to, no?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, apart from money issues, if you can do it like health wise and like you're healthy and everything, then yeah, you can definitely go into space. It's just we just have to keep in mind that we're not actually astronauts. We're just people, like civilians that want to go into space. And so there's a big difference. And because the training that astronauts go through is actually way more than it's like heavier, like more in depth than what normal civilians go through when they go into orbit. So
yeah, you're right. You want to be an astronaut someday or what?
Well, I mean, if there is a chance for me to be an astronaut, then yeah, of course, I would love it. But the thing is, like, one of the things that my friends and I were talking about earlier this year, I am short. So like I'm 4'11". That's very short.
Very short.
And so like literally 3 years ago, I was classified scientifically that I cannot pass the minimum requirement to be an astronaut because of my height.
Wait, is that like a human thing or is that a science thing?
No, it's like a NASA thing. Like there are like requirements for people to be astronauts, right?
Yeah,
and so,
I know, but
like,
was that decision by humans or is that decision by science? You know what I mean?
Honestly, I have no idea, but maybe I'm thinking it's humans, like, because I can't see why like a short person couldn't be an astronaut for some reason. I don't know. But anyway, so like 3 years ago, I couldn't be an astronaut, but now I can because like I grew a little bit. I'm 4'11", and I think the cutoff was like 4'10". So like I barely made it. So
is that
that's
still on,
thing.
like the 4'10", 4'11", the height requirement?
Yeah, it is for sure.
Because I know, I remember a few, like this is decades ago, there were a height requirement for soldiers, for flight attendants. They have to be tall and whatnot. Like, I like that's why I ask you, like, that's not science, that's human.
That's not science. Yeah, that is definitely humans. I think it is. Yeah, for sure. But also like I also wear contacts or like glasses. And so like I'd have to have like corrected vision if I wanted to be an astronaut as well. Plus the fact that it's very highly competitive. So I met an astronaut who was giving a talk in like a cafe, like a science cafe once. And he said that he applied 12 times. And on the 13th time, he got accepted. And that just tells you how competitive it is, you know? But, you know, it would be cool to go to space one day for sure.
The first Iraqi
woman to go into space. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it would be awesome. So fingers crossed.
Finger crossed, man. I'll be like, I know her.
Yeah, you know her. I did an interview with her.
You know? But yeah, no, I read the book by, what's his name? The Canadian astronaut there. He played some songs.
Chris Hadfield?
I'm terrible with
Hadfield.
it.
Yeah.
And I was reading it, and he's like, oh, if you want to be an astronaut, you cannot be sick for like, I don't know, hundreds of years. You cannot have a cold. I'm like, yo, is that possible?
Wow, really? I did not know that. Holy, that's like a lot of like health requirements as well. Well, yeah, I mean, it makes sense because like you need to be physically well 1000% before going into space, because like you'll be dealing with pressure and like whatnot and all that kind of dangerous stuff. So
I just have some silly questions to you because, you know, you're the smart girl.
No, of course. No silly questions here.
First thing, what is dark matter?
Yeah, okay. In simple terms, dark matter is something that we really don't know what it is. So we know it exists because if you look at galaxies, they're held together by something. And if you measure the force of gravity and its pull on these objects, you'd see that gravity alone cannot hold these objects together. Like something else has to exist. And so this thing that exists is stronger than gravity. But we don't really know what it is because it doesn't interact with light. That means it doesn't absorb, reflect, or emit light. And so we really can't observe it because light doesn't come through it at all. So we know it exists, we know it's there, and it makes up a very big percentage of the universe. I think it makes about 20-something%. Like the atoms that you see, like everything else you see, the galaxies, planets, and whatever, these only make about either 5 or 7% of the universe.
What's the other ones?
The other ones are dark matter and dark energy.
Aliens?
I mean, alien forces, yeah, for sure. But yeah, so pretty cool stuff.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
UFOs, the sightings. What's your opinion about that?
Oh, I mean, honestly, I wouldn't say I necessarily believe in UFOs, but I mean, they could be, I don't know, they could be some sort of like, I don't know, like an unidentified object, such as like something that looks like a plane or something that looks like birds or whatever. I don't know. If for me, like if there's no evidence for it, it doesn't exist. And so it's very hard for me to believe that, you know?
Sure.
Yeah.
This question was posted to me by my kids. They think I'm the smartest person ever.
Oh, amazing. Love it. Okay.
Okay. Apparently, clouds are heavy. How do you measure this thing? It's clouds.
Yeah. So, I would think that you would take like the density of so we know like clouds are made up of like water vapor and all that kind of stuff. And we also know that they are like charged. Some of them are charged. So like they have like charge in them. And so we can measure the masses we can measure the densities of clouds like that. And then we can determine if they're heavy or if they're not. So just by like reading about or like researching about what makes up the cloud components and stuff like that.
And the pressure in them.
Exactly. Yeah.
Listen, I'm gonna try to explain to them, but I'm like, yo, I'm not that smart.
I'm like, it's very interesting stuff for sure.
Yeah, because we were driving one day and they saw clouds. I'm like, yeah, Dad, did you know that clouds are like waste our time? I'm like, bro, they're clouds. Well, how can you know?
I mean, you go through them too with the airplane. So
That's
like,
what I'm saying, you know?
yeah, exactly,
And I'm
exactly.
like, you know what? I'm gonna talk to this smart, intelligent girl. She could probably explain it. I'm a retard. I don't know nothing.
Oh no, I'm sure you know lots that I don't know as well.
Yeah, I know a little bit. Another one, this one, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
How do you know what kind of gas or minerals a planet has by just looking through the telescope?
Oh, great. So I actually talk about that during like the tours that I give at the observatory. Okay. So you do this using a type of equipment called a spectrograph. So a spectrograph is going to be attached to the telescope. And so when you open the dome, when you look at the object, you collect all the light inside of it and whatnot, and you pass it through on to the spectrograph. What the spectrograph does is that it uses a technique called spectroscopy. And this technique in astronomy is very heavily used because it's very useful. And so what it does is that it looks through the spectra or like the spectrum of the planet or the star or the galaxy. What that means is it will collect how the light looks like in it. So you might see absorption lines, which are like the dark, empty spaces. But then you will also see like red lines. You'd also see yellow lines and blue lines and whatnot. And so what this tells you is literally the fingerprint of that object. And so no two objects will have the same spectrum. Because think of it as like your fingerprints. You can't have the same fingerprint as someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And so what these spectra do is that they tell us what elements are present in that object. So for example, if you see like, I don't know, like for example, if you see four red lines and then an empty line, like a blank space, and then another red line, then you would know that these are a hydrogen alpha line. So you know that there exists hydrogen in this element, in this planet.
Mm-hmm. How did they figure this out?
Well, I think it would be because through like so they would do this through having separate gases studied in laboratories.
Oh.
And then they would pass them. They would see their own spectra, and then they would see, okay, well, this element, for example, xenon is or neon or whatever has like a yellow color, a yellow line to it. This element has a green line to it, and so on.
Oh, and then they compare it.
Exactly. And then they would just match whatever's in there. And then they can also tell you, like the spectrum can also tell you how much of an element is there. So like if you see lots of like hydrogen, like lots of hydrogen alpha lines in its atmosphere, then you know that it's mostly made up of hydrogen. If you see like there is like a lot of nitrogen in its atmosphere, like a lot of lines of nitrogen, then you would say, okay, well, it's abundant in nitrogen as well.
Who could think of this? Like,
yeah, it's incredible. Yeah, exactly.
Listen,
that's why I love STEM.
I have spoken to like smart people. I've spoken to Elio. He works for NASA at the JPL.
Yeah.
I am grateful that people like you exist.
Oh, thank you so much. That's so very sweet of you.
No, it's a fact because I will never figure this shit out. And let's say right now I'm thinking of 100 people. None of them, except for Ellie and you, obviously. No one can figure this thing out.
Well, that's the beauty of science. Honestly, it's just always mind blowing, and it always leaves you more curious than before. Like you answer one question, and then other 3 questions come up, and then you answer those, and then thousands more come up as well. So it's always beautiful.
Listen, Sarah, I got many questions, but that doesn't mean I'll be able to answer it. I don't have the brain like your brain, you know what I mean?
I mean, honestly, my brain is still like learning new things every day, which is great. Like you never want to stop learning at all.
Oh, definitely. Listen, it's a fun conversation. Let's close out with this question, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
You've achieved so much and will achieve more incredible things. Having said that, do you think that little girl that used to watch the stars in the darkness would believe what her future self had accomplished?
Oh, well, no, not necessarily, to be honest. I mean, honestly, if you went to that little girl and you'd ask her, can you imagine 15 years, 20 years, you would be standing here like giving this podcast or like just graduating from university or whatever. No, I don't think she will tell you like, oh yeah, I do believe that this will happen, just because she didn't know if she was going to like survive the next bomb attack or whatever. But I'm glad that things turned out the way they did, and I've learned a lot in the process. And I think I always try to make that little girl proud of me, no matter what I do and no matter what decisions I make. And so I think she would be right now if she did see what I was doing and if she could see what I was doing and what things I've accomplished and whatnot. And I hope to make her even more proud in the future.
I bet. I'm sure she is.
Thank you
Sarah,
so much.
thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. This is a fun conversation.
Of course. Thank you for having me. And it's always been a pleasure to talk and chat about everything.
It's awesome. Awesome. Have a good evening.
You too. Hope you have a good day.
Thank you. Bye. Again, Sarah, thank you for coming on the podcast. I really do appreciate it. Thank you, listeners, for listening. This is Aaron Deliosa for An Immigrant's Life. I'll see you guys later.